Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Roddy, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on Fire Code Tech.
Thanks, Gus. I really appreciate you inviting me on. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I always like to give listeners a sense of, your background and kind of how you discovered fire and life safety. Would you mind giving me a little bit of discussion on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This actually might be the longest part of the podcast for the history of how people get to where they land today, right? So,
Sure.
just to give a little, I guess, a quick background to some of the listeners. I'm up in Canada, a couple hours outside of kind of sandwiched in between Toronto and Detroit on the Great Lakes, so when I started my career in firefighting. Before that, I was a licensed plumber. Went from high school, didn't really want to do the college route thing, and I immediately got a trade as a plumber, and I did that for a lot of years. And kind of back when I did it, um, we ran our own sprinkler piping, and we ran a lot of standpipe and worked under kind of like a shop ticket, like the company would have one ticket to do any of those kinds of installations. And you really didn't need to go to, sprinkler school or anything to do the stuff that we were doing at the time. You just learned on the fly. But I got a good sense of, what the systems were about. And although I enjoyed the plumbing part, uh, the fire systems, the sprinkler systems were really, they seemed more grand than what I was doing. I mean, you look at the other trades on big job sites and you wonder what they're doing. And the sprinkler stuff it was really cool stuff. Um, but you didn't really need to have a whole lot of training back then, at least for the installations that we were doing. And then as the years got on, before I got out of plumbing, it got more prominent where I get on bigger jobs with large sprinkler outfits that were doing the installations, and they were like, to me, they were kind of like God. They rolled in with all their equipment, all their manpower, and they were installing systems that I had never really even seen before, and they were large scale hospitals, factories, schools, stuff like that. I did a lot of industrial plumbing, and you know, first-hand look at some of the Victaulic things that they were putting in. I used to do the large threaded stuff. Working on big 8-10 inch sprinkler mains that were all threaded. It wasn't fun, I can tell you that. Working with big 6-foot pipe wrenches, and it was difficult stuff back then when I first started out. And then as the years go on, you see some of these sprinkler companies come in with Victaulic fittings. What Victaulic fittings? What are they like? It looked way more. Well, it looked way easier, that's for sure. But the style and the design that they were doing, I hadn't seen it before. So it really intrigued me, and that was my first kind of taste of fire systems in that regard. I would see the electricians and the fire alarm installers doing their thing. That wasn't really up my alley. I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it because I was more of a working with pipe, and the sprinkler stuff really tickled my fancy, if you wanted to say, in that regard. But so from there, as I went on the years on the tools as a plumber, it was difficult on the body. I thought I needed a change because in that kind of trade role, as you get older, there's only so many jobs you can get in an office setting as an estimator or whatever. Like, there's only so many jobs to be had, or you're on the tools for a lot longer, and it's tougher on your body. So I thought, This is going to sound cliche in Canada, but I played hockey with a lot of guys that were already firefighters in my my hometown. Some jobs were coming up, and they had they had said, with your background as a tradesperson, you should apply for it. And I did. I started to apply around some of the larger centers around myself in the small town of Stratford where I grew up. Toronto was hiring, some larger centers like that, but I had no idea. I would get an application for, and this would be up your alley. I get an application for, show me your history. Do you know anything about hydraulics or whatever? I didn't know what hydraulics was. I didn't know any of it really. So, as years go on, you learn about what hydraulics really are. So I started to apply. I really got the fever for it. And then luckily I got on in my hometown. So I got on as a firefighter in my hometown. That's how I started in the fire world, if you want to say. And I did that for 8 years. And there was a transition in my life where I needed to get off shift and do a day job. I needed a day shift for my family. So I switched to a fire prevention role. And I'll be honest with you, I switched to a fire prevention role for all the wrong reasons. I needed a day shift, but it turned out as years go on, it's a great career as a fire prevention officer. Once you really start to dive into the code, once you start to meet the fire prevention officers and other station chiefs and people in and around your area, and they kind of guide you along and help you learn. The code will be kind of the basic, the Bible of what you need to know to do your job well. It got really interesting, and you in our department, you'd have to take the courses, the provincial courses through. We have an office of the fire marshal, much like the states do. All the states down in the United States and the provinces up here in Canada. Each province has its own fire marshal's training center, if you want to call it that. And so once I started to take the courses, it was really cool stuff. It was really cool stuff. I already had that kind of background of building knowledge and some construction knowledge, and I had a good sense of when I married it up with the fire code. I was making a lot of sense of when I was back on those job sites, what the sprinkler installers were doing and why, what the fire alarm techs were doing and why, why they were installing it certain ways, why devices were so far apart, why, all that kind of stuff started to kind of make sense. And so I kind of got moving towards my career in that fire prevention world. And I've been doing that since 2000, in the fire department since 2004. Left the suppression division for fire prevention in 2011. So it's been 11 years, and then I'm actually making another transition. Right now, I'm a chief fire prevention officer. That's what I've worked up to become. And in that kind of world, you need to be that jack of all trades. But I'm certainly not a master of none. And so with that, when COVID happened, just prior to when COVID happened, I was approving some fire safety plans in my area. A large Toronto firm was in my little town of Stratford, doing some new construction, and I approved some fire safety plans. And it turned out that this company had an older gentleman that was kind of getting out of it. He was looking to get out and kind of pass the torch, and we got along great through the approval process of these fire safety plans. And so through some conversation, he asked if I wanted to start doing some fire safety plans for them. And typically, and I don't know if some of your past guests have said this, but typically as a fire prevention officer, you make your way through your career. I have about 10 more years left until I can retire. You make your way through your career, and then you retire, and then you kind of do this on the side. You do a couple of plans, we call it, do a couple of fire safety plans here and there for people. And this just kind of keeps your mind sharp in the code. And, a little bit extra cash and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't expect to start doing fire safety plans as a little side business when I was still in my 40s, basically. So it worked out well. I got some plans started with them, some plans approved with them, and I got a kind of a taste for life in the private sector. And as I moved through with this company that was out of Toronto, it went from fire safety plans to, well, what else, what other services can you offer? Well, we can do maybe some alternative solutions, or we can do some fire code consulting if there's some you know property managers or building owners or whatever that have had, uh, we call them inspection orders up here, or a notice of violation against the code. If they've had a notice of violation from other fire prevention officers in the province, how do you mitigate those, and how do you come into compliance and help customers out that way? So I kind of got a different feel for life on the other side of as a fire prevention officer into that little public sector thing, or sorry, the private sector part of it. So COVID hits, and this company kind of slowed down a bit, and we weren't busy at all. And I thought, I'm gonna try this on my own. I have, I think, some good, customer skills. I like chatting with people. I have some good knowledge I could use. I have some connections with people through other fire safety professionals that I can give this thing a go, and try my own company, and I did that. My first company was Ontario Fire Safety Plans, and it went well. And as I kind of moved along, it was just the fire safety plan stuff that I was doing for buildings, and it worked out well. And it was really neat to try to. I mean, it was a struggle at the time. I look back, it was kind of neat to try to source out, drafting people to do drawings for these fire safety plans, and to gain more customers, and do cold calls and emails, and do that kind of boots to the ground part of not just completing your job well. The fire safety plan is a service that you offer, but also starting a business, and kind of learning marketing and doing your own accounting. And it was a bit of a struggle, but like when I look back at it, I'm a lot better for it, for how I am today, with a new company, and I'll get into that. But it's just something was different every day, and I really enjoyed that. So I took my skills from being a plumber to a firefighter to fire prevention, and now I'm moving back out of fire prevention. I'll be leaving that role at the end of March to go back into suppression as an officer. And in our department, we work a 24-hour shift, 7 to 8 24-hour shifts a month. So that gets me back into the trucks, but it also frees up some time with my days off in between shifts, that I can really grow the company that we're working on now. So with that transition from my first company, Ontario Fire Safety Plans, and getting some connections, there was a company in Kitchener that had the connections and had the business knowledge, but they might not have had the fire code background. So at the end of the day, with this other company that I was subcontracting to, we decided to merge together. And in that, we created a new company, a new brand called Guardian Fire Consulting Group. And honestly, this thing has blown up. I can't believe the amount of customers, the amount of information that we've been able to compile into new websites, and reaching out to like fellows like yourself. It's been a great learning experience to work your way through the business world in that sense, and it's kind of culminated to this Guardian Fire Consulting Group. And I mean, that's where I'm at today. It's been a long, enjoyable road. Lots of mistakes on the way. I mean, if you don't make any mistakes, that means you're not trying out there, right? So lots of mistakes on the way, but it's been great, and that's where we're here today with Guardian Fire Consulting Group. And I was, like you had mentioned before when we were chatting before the podcast started. Your podcast are in the morning time when people are commuting to work, and I drive an hour to the fire station for my fire prevention role, and that's how I got onto your podcast. And it's really enjoyable to gather that knowledge from other people in other sectors of the fire safety world, if you want to call it that. And that's why I reached out to you, just because I'd seen some people. There was a fellow by the name of Aaron Johnson that was on episode 41, I think it was, and I don't know Aaron Johnson, only through LinkedIn. And the LinkedIn world is a great way to network and listen to other people's stories and maybe gather some more information on there. But when I started to, I reached out to Aaron and said, are you on Gus's podcast? He said, it was a great experience, and I listened to it. It was fantastic. But it's what I find with trying to get better at the business part of it, or just trying to be a better fire prevention officer, or a better code consultant, is that when you think you read the code, you read the standards, and you think you have a good handle on it, but then when you listen to somebody else talk about it, it sounds a little bit different. You have a bit different spin on it. You look at things differently when people explain it in different ways, and you kind of wonder, were you looking at the code reference the same way, or you kind of question yourself, but not in a bad way. You just want to make sure that you're the best that you can be at the fire code consulting part of it, or whatever your niche is. So when I started listening to your podcast and listening to other individuals explain their, fire safety background, or whatever, it made me want to learn more. It made me want to listen more to other people and grow that way. And that's the reason why I reached out to you, is because I hope that in this discussion with myself today, somebody else that might want to start a business, or somebody else that might want to move from a suppression division into fire prevention or public education, any of that kind of stuff, it might help somebody, get into that fire prevention world and also make a difference. So it all culminates into that, and that's been my road to where we're sitting today, and it's been enjoyable. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Man, that's a great love hearing about, kind of the origin story of your career and a couple of different roles you've held up till now, and yeah, just about your journey as an entrepreneur. I really enjoy hearing about that. It's something that why I got into doing these podcasts is people's stories, like you're saying, are inspiring to me and make me want to learn more and to do better. So that's the whole reason why I got into this thing. So I definitely understand what you're saying. Yeah, I wanted to clarify for some of the listeners, like, what is a fire safety plan? Because this has a little bit different of a meaning in the U.S. on what that is. I don't, we have them in specific buildings, but we might not have them in every building. It seems like it's a more common feature in Canada.
It is, yeah. So on the Ontario Fire Code part, we reference, for the most part, the National Fire Code. How close the National Fire Code is to the International Code, I'm not 100% sure. I know there's more similarities than not, but in Ontario, on the Ontario Fire Code side, buildings that are assembly occupancies need a fire safety plan. So I'll just kind of rhyme off all the ones that would need a fire safety plan, maybe a couple of examples. So assembly occupancies, churches, restaurants over 30 people sitting, schools, care occupancies, hospitals, care and treatment occupancies. We have a lot of vulnerable occupancies, we call them here. So what had happened years ago, we had some nursing home fires, and and there was some deaths, fire-related deaths in that, and it was found that we needed to sharpen up some of the code references to assist with that part of the code, the vulnerable occupancy. So a vulnerable occupancy is something like a hospital or a nursing home, where if more than two people need assistance out in case of a fire, then that kind of kicks in that vulnerable occupancy, or the VO that we call them. So that's a care and treatment occupancy type, which would need a fire safety plan. Detention occupancies, residential occupancies with more than 10 people sleeping. So that'd be like, we call them 9/8s or 9/5s, but some duplexes, some triplexes, multi-unit dwellings that have more than 10 people sleeping. Retirement homes, business and personal services with occupant loads that exceed 300. You're looking at the Lowe's, Home Depots, Walmarts. They would need fire safety plans up here as well. Same with mercantile occupancies over 300 occupant load. And then you get into some high, medium, and low hazard buildings. High hazard buildings, maybe something that would have a lot of flammable, combustible liquids in it. If you have more than 25 occupant load in those buildings, you need a fire safety plan. In a medium hazard, you need more than 100 occupant load for a fire safety plan, and in a low hazard, you need more than 300. So that we have a lot of automotive manufacturing in our area. We're close to Detroit with our highway systems, and in Toronto, and the auto industry is kind of big in this area as well. So there's a lot of manufacturing where some of those buildings can get up, into the thousands of employees. So those ones would also need fire safety plans. So what a fire safety plan is kind of divided in half. Part of it is for the fire crew showing up. So this fire safety plan that would be approved by the AHJ. It would be posted by the fire alarm panel at the principal entrance, usually in a fire safety plan box. And when the fire crews show up, if there's an incident, a fire emergency, the incident commander can take that fire safety plan out, and it would have all the human audit information, all the people that are in charge of that building, phone numbers. If it was in the middle of the night and the building was unoccupied at the time, they know who to call to get people there, key holders. It would have part of the drawings that would go along with this fire safety plan. It would have a site plan drawing that would show where the gas shutoff is, where the sprinkler shutoff is, where the fire alarm panel and control panel is, things like that, the main electrical panel. Any hazards that might be in that building can be identified on those drawings. And then depending on, if you have let's say a high-rise building, you're going to have a site plan showing that building and all the shutoffs. You're going to have any underground parking. You're going to have all the floors that are, drawn out going forward with the suites and the corridors and exits and pull stations, and just showing all those kind of things that the incident commander and the crews would need to know, where the fire hose cabinets are, all that kind of stuff. So that's one half of the fire safety plan. The other half is for the owner of that building or the supervisory staff, so who's in charge of that building, to train off of. What do you do in the case of emergency? Who's in charge? If it's a residential building, let's say a condominium, it's the supervisory staff or the owner's responsibility to make it aware to those residents how to get out, where your exits are, what to do in case of a fire, who to call. So that's kind of the dividing line of what a fire safety plan is. One of it's for the fire crew showing up to know what to do and what that building has as far as hazards or as far as fire and life safety equipment. And then the other half is for the owner or the supervisory staff to know what to do in case of emergency, who's in charge, and to have a plan. I say this to a lot of people, like what's kind of the frequent thing that you always say to people for fire safety, and it's knowing your two ways out, and the fire safety plan kind of entails that. But whether I'm talking to a kindergarten class and going over the little home fire escape plans, or if I'm talking to a condominium board with elderly people that still need to know what their two ways out are and have a plan. It's the practice makes perfect part. So a fire safety plan encompasses all of that. If there's any changes to the building, it needs to be updated. Drawings need to be updated and resubmitted to the AHJ for review and approval. And then it's the supervisory staff or the owners of those buildings that need to review it annually and make sure that they're practicing their 2 ways out, practicing their fire drills and what to do. And a lot of times in our area, we have some, when I mentioned the vulnerable occupancies, they'll all have fire safety plans. We do fire drills annually with the supervisory staff and the owners there. We witness them. They have to do them in a certain time period. It's a time drill. A lot of the time, the fire crews show up because they're vulnerable buildings and vulnerable people inside those buildings, and it's good for everybody to at least do it annually on those buildings, other buildings like it for fire safety plans. So I can't stress enough that if you're unsure if you need a fire safety plan, reach out to your HJ. They love to help to make sure, because at the end of the day, there's I mean, not everybody lives in an area where you have a career department and fire prevention people that can drive over in a matter of minutes and help you out. You might have somebody like the other fella on your podcast there, the last podcast from Montana. Some of those areas you might have one person as a fire prevention officer. They can't get everywhere at once. They don't have the resources to help out, but that might be where a co-consulting company comes into play as well. That can help you out to see if you need a fire safety plan. So depending on your area, depending on the building you're in, make sure that you either have a fire safety plan that's updated, or if you're not quite sure, to reach out to your HJ and see if you can. I mean, you get to some of these large centers. I would say the Torontos in our area, the fire prevention officers can't get everywhere at once. There's buildings that don't have plans to get out. They haven't had their systems checked annually like they should. So it's an onus on the owner to get that done and to make sure their building's up to code. But and to make sure that they have a fire safety plan as well that's updated.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate that. That it's twofold for the building owner and for the emergency personnel that are going to be operating in the building. So that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense on that part of it. So, as like a fire prevention officer for a fire department, so what does that role look like in Canada? Are you reviewing shop drawings for professionals for fire suppression and fire alarm? Are they coming through your office and are you getting to review those, or are you mainly looking at fire safety plans, or is it really a kind of a bit of everything? I'd just like to hear more about what that role looks like on the public level.
Yeah, on the public level, and I can speak on we're a medium sized city, 40,000 people. What I review are more fire safety plans. We'll get into site plan review, so new buildings that are going to be constructed in our area will be brought in from the building department's standpoint to review. Does it need a fire route? Private fire hydrants. Do they need a fire safety plan? Any hazards that building might have that we can raise a red flag for then in that site plan review part. So we do the fire safety plan, or sorry, the site plan review for that. Typically, it's the building departments in our area that do the plan review, reviewing the shop drawings, reviewing the electrical, mechanical drawings that might entail all the sprinkler design, electrical design. We really lean on our professional engineers to have the calculations correct, have the systems designed correctly. That's we really lean on that, and those professional stamps mean a great deal to us in Ontario. And we have site plan reviews when these buildings are being built, and we have a chance to ask questions. It's changed a little bit with COVID. We used to go to a city building where we would all meet. The owner of the building that is going to be doing the constructing. The the hydro department would come, fire department would come, building department, and we'd all do a roundtable discussion and raise any red flags there. But in the larger centers, like I would say the Torontos, they have specific plans review people that would do that. They work for the fire prevention division, but they do plans review only. And they're very good at that, very skilled at knowing when to catch anything that might come up in the I'd say the OBC, the Ontario Building Code, or the fire code as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good spot to transition and talk a little bit more about the codes and standards. I know you spoke a little bit before on how fire safety plans are required by the building code, but yeah, I'm always so fascinated to hear about people working in different jurisdictions that I'm not as well versed in. You know how they navigate codes and standards, but would love to hear about you speak a little bit more about just like broadly high level overview what that structure looks like in Canada or in your uh, province more specifically. I'm sure it'd be easier for you to speak to that instead of nationally.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak on the Ontario Fire Code, which is based on our National Fire Code of Canada, and I'm pretty well versed at that. I'd like to say I have a good handle on that. But I mean, as Guardian Fire Consulting Group grew, we grew nationally. So we also do work in Manitoba, Alberta, and British Columbia, and those provinces go off the National Fire Code. There's some similarities, but there's Ontario Fire Code is a little bit more stringent, a little bit more intricate in certain areas, and that's not to take away from the National Fire Code by any stretch. So it is really neat when I haven't flown out to those other provinces. We have connections out there that do some boots on the ground inspections or whatever for us. But when I get chatting with the other AHJs in Edmonton or Victoria, BC, it's really neat to hear their side of what they need out of their part of the code. So across the country, different provinces might need different little intricacies within their code to help them out, kind of thing. So we work off the National Fire Code, with each provincial code being a little bit more intricate to their needs. And with that, like in the Ontario Fire Code, we have a lot of we call them CAN ULC standards, so Canadian Underwriters Laboratory of Canada standards. So when fire alarm systems are installed, smoke alarms, any textiles used in buildings, open air tents, any of that kind of stuff, we need it to be created or manufactured under a CAN ULC standard, we call it. And that is broadened off of the UL standards from the states. And I'll be quite honest with you, from a Canadian fire prevention officer standpoint, there's a lot of connections to the United States as far as how further ahead you are with some fire protection standards. So there's a lot of references in our codes to a CAN ULC or an underwriter laboratory standard that we look for in compliance with some parts of the code. And then, like for our fire code and our legal requirements, we work under a Fire Protection and Prevention Act. There's an act at the front of our code. I'm pretty sure it's the same down in the States. Am I correct in saying that each state would have its own code, and in that they work under an act?
Yeah, so it's
Is
the way it kind of works in the states is like each state has its own adoption of the building code, the international building code, and they have specific amendments. So they kind of each accept, oh, we accept 2015 or 2018 edition of the building code, and we have these specific amendments at the state level or at the city level. And so it's kind of all under certain municipal code that gives it the force of law. So I think that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah. That's it. It gives us our rights of entry, or it gives us what a chief's duties are, what a an AHJ's duties are. So we work under that act. That act, you know, gives us our framework for what we can and cannot do. And then, like I said before, our province has a fire marshal's office, and that's who we train through. We were doing a provincial training curriculum before, and we've switched to the NFPA curriculum, which is terrific. So we work off of IFSTA, and I'm gonna mess up that acronym, but the International Fire. You know what I mean? So we work off IFSTA. We train off that. So there's a lot of similarities between our code and our standards and what has come out of the U.S. I can speak specifically in Stratford, where we have a theater company and 4 theater buildings in town, quite famous in our area. Do a lot of Shakespearean plays and stuff like that. And when they do a lot of like flame proofing of textiles, the curtains that they use to divide the crowd from the stage, and any standards that they come to our office for approval, it is usually tenfold above and beyond what our standards might be. They use a lot of California standards in the theater world. I'm not too sure exactly why, but the California standard is pretty thorough and stringent
Yeah.
and quite safe. So we see a lot of blending between our Canadian codes and standards, which I'm sure in that history has come from the U.S. side. So there are a lot of similarities, maybe just some different terms and acronyms that we use, but that's basically what we work off of.
Oh yeah, very cool. I appreciate that. Appreciate that explanation on, you know, uh, the codes and standards, since that's the bread and butter of what we do. But it's like
Yeah.
feels like it's in a different world, and like I'm totally out of my element when I'm hearing you talking about this stuff. But yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a bit more about like just your experience, being an entrepreneur and starting and like this endeavor during the pandemic. Like, man, that sounds like a really wild ride. I'd love to hear some more about just like the nuts and bolts about you figuring that out, like challenges that you had and like the different things you had to overcome during that process. It sounds like it was a lot.
It was a lot, and it was enjoyable. I mean, if anybody's going to start a company, be an entrepreneur, starting it during a pandemic is a good way to learn some quick lessons. But I mean, like I had mentioned before, I had started working for another firm, and the problem was, so with our company, we have careered fire prevention officers that work with us. So they're all subcontracted out. So if it's slow, like through the pandemic was, because I'll say, like, from my fire department, we were working remotely. We got shut down and worked remotely 3 different times for, let's say, a span of 2 to 3 months. So there was no fire inspectors, really boots to the ground, that were doing inspections and making owners come into compliance. So it wasn't as busy as I wanted it to be, right? Like, I wasn't doing it from my end, and the customers that I wanted to work for weren't getting any requests from AHJs to get work done, fire safety plans or code reviews or any of that kind of stuff, right? So but it was almost a blessing in disguise, because it allowed me some time to figure out. I mean, I wasn't a good computer guy. I had to figure out how to do Word Perfect and PDF, you know, uh, fire safety plan, and I get really proficient with computers. So it allowed me time to do that. It allowed me time to build my LinkedIn portfolio and to reach out to people like yourself, or anybody in our area and abroad, to get a good sense of what other entrepreneurs are doing. and try to navigate, not really recreate the wheel and try to offer anything different, because as cool as the fire prevention world is, there's only so much you can do, right? And you just want to get really good at that. So trying to get that network of people in place that can kind of help. And I can say, you know, the more people I reached out to were people that already had companies and were already along the line, along the way, like people in, you've heard of Jensen Hughes and
Uh-huh.
Morrison Hirschfield, like they're in international kind of co-consulting companies.
Mm-hmm.
They're, I started reaching out to the big dogs, if you want to call it, and to find out what do you got to do to get not to where you are. I don't want to get that large of a company, but they must have done something right to get to the size they were at. So, I got that network in place as far as being able to comfortably reach out to people and get answers back. Marketing, I'm not a social media guy completely, but you start doing your own posts and getting your name out there, and then it turns into accounting. You're making some money now. You got to do your accounting, and you have to incorporate. You get an accountant, and you figure out how to become a corporation and do all those kind of steps to make sure you're doing. I mean, the IRS down there, but it's the CRA, the Canadian Revenue Agency up here. You want to make sure that you don't tick them off, right? So
Sure.
it's been growth. I mean, I had some grandeur in my head that, as these other individuals and companies I reached out for, I could see, you know, I'm trying to be an entrepreneur. So you want to make some money at it, right? So I'm
Sure.
seeing these other companies that were quite large and pulling in some big figures. And I was humbled quite quickly to learn that it's got to grow organically. You can't do the leaps and bounds and try to offer more than you can. If you offer a service and some large company wants to hire you, you got to make sure you have the players at the table to be able to offer that service. Or, as much as we're in the internet world and it seems like it's a large world, the word of mouth part of it gets around quite quickly. So you want to make sure that you have a really good brand. So when I connected with this other firm, when I was Ontario Fire Safety Plans, and they were who they were, and we branded to Guardian. There was a fellow by the name of Robert Hennig that was running his company, an older gentleman. They're older than me, and he really helped me learn a lot about, keeping it slow, customer service, getting a good brand, like just slowing down and having it grow organically. And that's been huge because, you know, I'm a goer. I get up in the morning and I want to go all day long, and that's the way I'm hardwired. But when it comes to the entrepreneurial stuff, you can do that to a point when you're starting to reach out for new connections and stuff like that. But when you really are sitting down talking to people and try to discuss what you can do for them, you really got to slow it down and make sure that you're open and honest, and you treat it one customer at a time. So that growth organically through this pandemic has actually helped quite a bit to, if it was super busy, there wasn't a pandemic going on, and for whatever reason I was getting jobs left, right, and center, I might not have found, you know, all the tools in the toolbox to be a good business person. So when things might have got tough, I would have known how to deal with it, right? So going at it slow, you hear a lot of these entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, and you hear all these little sound bites of all these entrepreneurs about it. It sounds easy, just do this, just do that, and you'll be rolling in this, and you'll be doing that, and it's not. And I hope people believe the fact that when you want to become an entrepreneur and start your own business, it's going to be a slow go, but it's a marathon. It's not a race. So I'm finding that, and I'm getting in a good state of mind, a frame of mind to go the long game. I mean, people might have an idea of a date of when they want to retire. I'm going to be 60 and I want to retire. I don't think that way. It's I want to do this as long as I can, I'm going to be hitting 50. It doesn't matter, or when you're turning 60, that you just shut the door and you're done with your entrepreneurial life, and you're done with the business. Like, you're only going to get better as the years go on. I mean, I could say this wholeheartedly, that when I started in the fire prevention world, and I was 12, or let's say 10 years into it, and I thought, I'm going to do my own business. I know enough. I didn't know near what I thought I should know. So when you started reaching out to other people, listening to podcasts like yourselves, and trying to brand, you quickly realize that this fire protection world, fire prevention, public education, it's massive, and there's so many layers to it that, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I have my own business. Yes, we're growing quite nicely, but we're just in the incipient stage. Like this, there's a lot to know. And I can say to other entrepreneurs as well, we have 9 services that we offer. Anything from the fire safety plans that we had chatted about, co-consulting, alternative solutions. Alternative solutions being, there's something in the code that can't quite be achieved, so you have another solution that can still, have the functional statements and objectives be reached. Fire extinguisher training. There's lots of things that we do, but make sure that whatever you offer, you're going to do it well, and just take it one customer and one project at a time, kind of thing. So my road from being a fire prevention officer to thinking I could start, hitting the ground running as an entrepreneur or running a business, has been a great eye opener. And I can say, like you had mentioned about this whole pandemic world, as much as you'd like to, you know, put money in your bank account hand over fist, anybody would want to do that. I'm glad the pandemic's kind of slowed things down for some people that did maybe leave their full-time jobs and started a business, to be able to just kind of slow it up, figure your base business out, and then grow from there. So it's been a good learning curve. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to hear. I feel like you did a lot of hard things, and you got to kind of have that willingness to jump into the deep end and just go do it. And so, like, I can hear your disposition to go and to not be stagnant and to want to move forward. And honestly, I've seen most people just sputter out at the first couple steps, like before you even get into ever really doing the thing. So that energy and that momentum carried you through into like starting and doing the thing. But I think it was really a good takeaway for me to be like, hear you say, yeah, sometimes though you need to slow down and you need to be more thoughtful about, just saying like, yeah, we can do it. Yeah, we can do it. Because that's how I feel sometimes too. Like I'm quick to say yes, and then as I start to process it or think about it, I realize that, oh man, there's like these roadblocks that I wasn't thinking about, and I was just excited about getting into the process of it. And so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
Like,
I feel similarly as you. So yeah, it's good for me to hear that somebody else say that, because so I can try to internalize that.
yeah, well, it's true. I mean, I hated hearing it 2 years ago when I had people go, "Oh, just take it slow." I said, "No, I gotta go. I got something to offer. I wanna get it out to the world, right?" But and then just to kind of to add to that, family is a huge part in wanting to become an entrepreneur and start your own company. Like, not only does my wife and kids have to deal with me, well, I mean, going into shift 5 days a week now to be a fire prevention officer, but soon going back on the fire trucks and back into fires, they have to deal with that part of it. But they also have to deal with, okay, guys, I have a podcast I'm going to do this morning. You got to stay out of my way. Or, I got these projects on the go. I'm working Saturday. I'm working Sunday. I'm up at 5. I'm doing stuff in the morning before you go to, like, it takes some understanding and some support from your family as well. I
Yeah.
can't say that enough. If you're going to be able to be successful in the business, you got to be successful in your own life first. To that regard, I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, but yeah, it's, you got to have that support as well.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it is a hard thing. It can be a hard thing, that extra work. And if you don't have solid foundations in your family or your personal life, it's not going to add up. It's not going to add up to be good. So,
No,
yeah, I
no.
appreciate that's a good thing what you're saying, that and I've definitely experienced it too, long
Yeah,
hours or working on the weekend or just having an understanding with your significant other or your family and just like that, hey, I'm gonna take care of business. I still, value all these other great things about life, but this is something that's important to me and that gives me a lot of energy and makes me excited to wake up in the morning. Like I can know that you're stoked when you get up to work on something and feel like you're really moving the needle for your personal and your
exactly.
family life. Like that's
Exactly.
huge.
Yeah. And when you're bettering yourself, you're better for others, right? So it kind of sounds a little bit, maybe selfish when you're taking off in your home office for, hours on the weekend, and I get it. Some days you might rather be playing catch with your son, or going for a walk with your dogs, or whatever it is. And you get to that. You have to have a good family work life balance. But when you're better as a person and you're working on yourself, then you're better for your significant other, for your kid, all that kind of stuff, right? So it all, this is our baby. Like, I love fire prevention, and I think you do too. But it goes worldwide. I mean, if you got to be good at yourself, to be good at your job, to be able to offer this, to be, it's just the intertwining of all this is just, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Life is beautiful that way.
Yeah, it is. It feeds off itself, and you're right. I mean, like I've seen people who become, who care about what they do, reap benefits in all aspects of life. So I think that it's beneficial in that way. But I wanted to kind of round out the podcast with a question about just like where do you like to get technical information, or like how do you keep in touch with like what the industry's doing. I know that you talked about IFSTA, which I had to Google that, but just says International Fire Service Training Association. I think I've seen good resources from them before, but what other places do you like to, I don't know, just read articles or content like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm lucky as a fire prevention officer, as an AHJ, that we get fed provincially, or it'd be state for you guys. Um, any changes to the fire code that's about to happen, or we have certain times throughout the year where we can have our input into changes into the code coming up. Like you had mentioned, you're working off the 2015 building code and fire code, and we are as well. There's some new changes coming out soon. So we have our fire marshal advisors uh, that we can reach out for. There's UL courses that we've taken. There's something called integrated systems testing that we do. So instead of in a building that's being built and different systems, fire and life safety systems being commissioned, the elevator's commissioned, the fire alarm system, everything's commissioned on its own. There's a new standard through UL where it's called integrated systems testing, and Guardian does that as well as coordinators, where we have test days, and we have all the design people that have designed those systems and the installers there to test everything at once, so they all marry and talk to each other. The fire alarm system goes off, the elevator comes down the way it should, the fire pump activates the way it should, all those kind of things. So that's integrated systems testing. We do that, but I get that knowledge in those courses through UL, which is out of Illinois, who I chat with. Subscribe to NFPA, the NFPA network. They have daily stuff that comes out. It's terrific reads, right? It keeps you in tune with, how many NFPA standards are there. There's a ton. I don't even know how. I don't even know how many. It's in the thousands, but you like I talked about becoming a better fire prevention person. Like, there's standards that come out where you didn't even know it existed, kind of thing. So NFPA is a great one for that. And then really the best knowledge base that I get are from other AHJs, people like yourself. The talking part, there's lots of people with lots of skill sets that just want to teach other people about it. So other people are one of the big proponents of where I get a lot of my knowledge for. So it's good. And there's some Canadian standards up here, the CFAA, Canadian Fire Alarm Association. That's a big one. Fire alarms have such a huge place in buildings and are intertwined with a lot of other systems that you need to really know what these designers and installers are up against. And I mean, I'm going to say I'm just an AHJ, but I'm not the professional installing it. So you really lean on those professionals to teach you as well. So there's lots of those kind of, you know, daily things on the internet that come out through NFPA, through fire alarm associations, through our fire marshal's offices that, they keep you up to date. So what I used to do when I started, I didn't read them at all. I thought I just, I need to just look at the book. I need to deal with my community and deal with the fire code issue there. But it wasn't until I stopped and started reading these things where I really got some good value. I hated reading before I became a business owner. Even in the fire, I hated reading. I hated, trying to dive my nose into a book to figure out a situation. I was more of a talker and just tried to, call somebody for an answer, or that's how I used to do it. It's so like slowing down and growing your business. I had to slow down and start reading through all these little standards and organizations that offered this knowledge, like NFPA and the UL standards. And then, my mind was blown with all the other things that were in there that could really broaden my horizons and knowledge on fire prevention. So those are the main ones that I look at. Our provincial fire marshal's office, NFPA, UL, and then from that we have some trades like the fire alarm and sprinkler trades that have networks that have daily reach.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Roddy. Well, thank you so much. Well, where can people find you or find Guardian? Sorry, what was the name of your company again? Where can they find you or your company? Plug whatever you would like.
Yeah, it's Guardian Fire Consulting Group. So it's guardianfcg.ca, CA obviously because we're in Canada. But again, we're national. We're looking at getting in. We're so close to the States that we're getting into that lower portion as well. So if you look on the website Guardian at www.guardianfcg.ca, you'll find everything you need to know about us. You can reach out, ask any questions, and we just love to help. Not necessarily that it's going to come to fruition with any projects, but if you have any fire code questions, I love answering those. Just absolutely love it.
Awesome. Well, Roddy, thank you so much and for coming on the podcast. And yeah, it was awesome.
Thanks, Gus. I really appreciate it. It was really nice to meet you and chat with you. And I look forward to more of your episodes. They're terrific.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.